Familiar with Huna wisdom? How about Ho'oponopono? This is Robert Manni, host of Guys Radio, and we're going to talk about those two forms of Hawaiian shamanism tonight on Guys Radio with my special guest, Jonathan Hammond. He's written this book called The Shaman's Mind. The show starts tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific Time on KCAA in Southern California, 102.3, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. The pod drops worldwide tomorrow, and you can catch all my shows on my new YouTube channel at Robert Manni, Guys TV. Thanks for your support.
It's Guy Radio. Here's your host, Robert Manni.
Welcome to Guys Radio. This is your host, Robert Manni, welcoming you to the show where men and women can be at their best and everyone wins. Guys Radio. I'm here to inform you and inspire you and empower you, hopefully to get you think, feel, and maybe even act by virtue of my guests who come on to share their stories and experiences with you and with me, and it's been a real education for me, and I hope if you've been listening to the show, you've picked up some information that'll stretch your mind and stretch your spirit and really help you see beyond that fence in your backyard. Here we are on Guys Radio. We've got a great show today. I've got a gentleman by the name of Jonathan Hammond. He's written a book called The Shaman's Mind, Huna Wisdom to Change Your Life. And what Huna is, it's a Hawaiian version of shamanism. It's related to the Ho'oponopono, which we will talk about, version of shamanism. And it's really, when you look at shamanism anywhere, it's about energy, it's about divinity, it's about love, it's about recognizing the God in everybody that you come across and everything that you come across. And it's really made a big change in Jonathan's life, and he's got a great story. His book is The Shaman's Mind, Huna Wisdom to Change Your Life, and we're going to talk about his experiences in New York and in Hawaii, and also he does spiritual counseling, shamanic healing. He's a Reiki master like I am, chakra balancing, and also breath work. So a lot of good stuff for you to consider and maybe weave into your lifestyle. Jonathan Hammond's going to be our special guest. So what's going on out there, Guys Radio? Well, before anything else, I want to make sure I do a proper shout out to my producers. First, Ryan Gilpatrick. He's been with me for a number of years, and he's done a fantastic job. And he's still going to be with us in the various capacities, but I want to make sure he gets all the credit he deserves. And also, we've got Christina Marcello is our new producer, line producer, and she's doing a fantastic job. So thank you, Christine, for being with me and on Guys Radio, doing a great job, and we're having a lot of fun. And hopefully the quality of the show keeps getting better and better and better because we're here for you on Guys Radio. So what's happening out there? Just real quick, I think the most important thing that's happening out there, I don't like to get into politics, as you know, on Guys Radio. There's plenty of places you can go to get your politics, and it's usually, one side or the other side. And I think I like to keep Guys Radio kind of out of politics. But I will say one thing, this whole thing with the post office, we've got to make sure that we protect the post office. I know I get my mail, I get my bills, I pay bills through the mail. I actually think for voting with this year, and because the country's so divided, I think they should have people vote in person, by mail, by computer, whatever it takes to get people registered who are allowed to vote. They should be able to vote. And let's get as many people voting as possible, because this is a year where, an election where there's so many points of view and so much division that I think it's important that everybody be heard and we finally get an answer on who we want to lead this country once and for all. And without getting into any nonsense about fraud and this and that, let's just let the post office do their job. We have to fund the post office. It's a thread that keeps part of the fabric of America. No matter what side you're on, you have to admit that. And I've talked to people from both sides, and everybody agrees to that. So let's clear that up, and then let's get everybody out there voting. I don't think they're going to allow online voting this year, but I think since we do everything else online, I pay my taxes online, and I'm sure a lot of you do too, and do your banking, and We do it by mail. We do it by computer. So, with anything, there can be some issues, but these are the ways we do things nowadays. So let's keep moving into the 21st century, folks. So anyhow, that's my little bit on the election and voting, but I'm not going to pick sides or anything like that. That's up for you, and everybody's got their opinion, and I respect that. And I respect the people, regardless of their opinions, because, friends are friends, and everybody's entitled to think what they think. So, Guys Radio, what else is happening out there? Well, I'm almost been in Southern California for a year, and it's interesting that my friends from New York say, "Hey, wow, you got out of there just in time." And then I read a lot and see a lot and listen to people here saying, "Oh, they can't wait to get out of California." But I have to say, coming from the Northeast, it's been a breath of fresh air. I know things have slowed down because of the COVID, but it's been great so far. I really enjoy it. And I know it's expensive, and I know there's a lot of people here. So I'm used to that from New York. And New York's really congested and really expensive. So it's a little bit different, and I'm enjoying it, and my family's enjoying it. So we hope to be here for a couple of years and see what happens from there. So thank you, San Diego, for being a wonderful city that we're in. I know it's got problems with homelessness and all kinds of stuff like every big city has. But you want problems, come to New York City and places I've lived and been, and you'll see big problems. And they're going to have a tough time getting over the hump here because the COVID has really impacted the quality of life there, because people moved to New York for a reason, and a lot of its proximity, taking advantage of the restaurants, the small clubs, the Broadway, etc. And a lot of that stuff you can't take advantage of now. So you're paying a premium and you're living in tight quarters and you're not getting what you paid for. And it's going to take a while for everything to come back. But New York is doing a very good job that they did through the lockdown. They're starting to come back now, and it's a monstrosity to try to manage New York City, but they're doing pretty good. So shout out to New York and shout out to San Diego. So we're here on Guys Radio. We've got Jonathan Hammond as our guest. So let's get right at it.
It's Guy Radio.
A special guest today, his name is Jonathan Hammond. He's written a new book. It's called The Shaman's Mind-Huna Wisdom to Change Your Life. And Jonathan, like myself, longtime New Yorker, though he's not there now, and he actually was really turned on, had his inciting incident in life, if you will, when he went to Hawaii and learned about Hawaiian shamanism. And as you know, I recently interviewed Alberto Villoldo, and he's a famous shaman, and I'm really curious to learn more about the power of plant medicine, how we can work on ourselves. And from everybody I've spoken to over the years, one thing I've gleaned, and that's over 500 interviews, and that is we have to do the work. The individual can do the work, and it's limitless what we can do. But we have to start. If you want to change the world, you got to start with yourself. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Jonathan Hammond is a teacher, energy healer, shamanic practitioner, and spiritual counselor. Before beginning his work in holistic health and spirituality, he had a career, award-winning actor, very highly trained, appearing on Broadway and on TV. He graduated Harvard, University of Michigan. He's an interfaith minister, certified spiritual counselor, and he also holds certificates as a master teacher in shamanic Reiki, Cherokee bodywork, and Ho'oponopono, and is an ordained Alakai leader guide through Aloha International. He teaches classes, obviously lots of classes online now. He gives lectures in shamanism, energy healing, spirituality, Huna and the One Spirit, the Learning Alliance in New York, the Omega Institute, and many other venues around the world. And he's written this fantastic book that I've been going through this week called The Shaman's Mind, Huna Wisdom to Change Your Life. And I'm sure I botched the pronunciation of Ho'oponopono. Is Jonathan Hammond.
For what it's worth, no one says it right, so don't worry about it.
How do you
Ho'oponopono.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But
let's
close it up.
at the very beginning. You're a Reiki master from the Yasui lineage, and so am I. And so we can attune other people, and we can work on other people. And I'd like to start out and talk about Reiki a little bit, because people are getting hip to Reiki now. If you have post-surgery in the hospital, you can always get a Reiki session. People don't know about that. It doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't cure anything, but it puts you in a position to cure yourself. It's like a flowing stream and eliminating rocks that are kind of blocking your energy meridians. And it's changed my life when I did the different levels of the training, where when I finally became attuned as a Reiki master teacher, I felt like when I was sitting at the beach one day and I felt like I could reach out and put my finger about a mile away into the ocean. And I noticed that it's changed my perspective on everything since that day. And now it's just kind of integrated in my energy and my energetic field in my system. That to me is Reiki. What is it to you, Jonathan, and what has your experience been in being attuned and also working with others?
Yeah. So, all the shamans were working with energy. That's what shamans do. They work with energy. And the Usui lineage it specifically comes out of Japan, but it's pointing towards something universal, which is the energy of nature. So if you think of nature, nature has its own creative force. Nature's always moving towards growth. It's always moving towards its own unfoldment. And the process of Reiki is about how we can channel that same force of energy, that life force, that nature force, which then of course helps with healing, certainly helps with any kind of relaxation, entering into other spiritual realms, and we all have access to that direct revelation. We have access to it whether or not we're Reiki trained or not, but Reiki provides us with a systematized approach that helps us actually enter into that. And in entering into that and allowing ourselves to be a vessel for healing energy to flow, we're entering into a kind of lineage that's very universal. Because, as I said, all indigenous cultures, the shamans there, were working with this healing energy.
So the way Reiki has worked with me, at least, and Jonathan, please correct me, is it comes in through my crown chakra and goes out through my hand. So yeah. I'm basically a conduit. And I noticed that when I stopped getting in the way, it worked a lot better because I didn't want to give away my energy. And I found out one time I gave somebody, it was the night before the New York City Marathon, and I gave a friend a Reiki treatment because she made me a nice pasta dinner. And I ran the worst race of my life. And I'm like, I was bonked by the 13-mile mark. And I'm like, and I was in the greatest shape I've ever been in. I'm like, I made a mistake. I should have never done that. And if I did it, I know not to allow my energy to escape me, actually. So when you do your work, how do you do it? How do you ground yourself? How does the energy flow? And what do you feel when you're working on somebody?
Well, you're absolutely right. It is, it's kind of like there's a healing grid around the planet, and essentially we can tune into that grid of energy. You could call it spiritual intelligence, you could call it God, you could call it divinity, whatever you want to call it. But essentially, when you invite that in, and it does come in through the crown of your head, I think that's how I sort of feel it too, and moves through your body and moves through your hands. So I think that's a good way to look at it. In terms of getting out of the way, it's about tuning into something that is so much bigger than us. And these spiritual intelligences, I often say they're 30 steps ahead. And they know what's better for us more than we do. And so to open ourselves to that is to open to a divine intelligence. That has its own wisdom and its own directionality and even its own intention. And the more that we can get out of the way and let that come through, the more that we can find out that there are surprises that Spirit has in store for us that are way better than kind of what our pea brains could come up with on our own. So the idea of just being a vessel is really great, and we all have access to that.
Now, when you work on somebody, I just want to do a little bit of a deeper dive on Reiki, if you don't mind, because we both practice, and you a lot more than I do. But a couple of things. One, some people, they do a scan, and they'll find if there's a problem in a certain area, and obviously you can do your intention and your symbols through that area. But I also have found, and I want to get your take on it, Jonathan, is if you give the Reiki, the energy goes where it needs to go. It knows, as you were saying, the universal intelligence, it knows where it needs to go in the body. So it's not as important to direct to a very specific place unless there's a real problem there. Otherwise, if you do a general overview, it'll shift things around. And I find people, they'll burp or they'll fart or they'll go to the bathroom afterwards or they'll cry or whatever. You see all these emotions come out because so many people are blocked, are stuck. Is
That's
that
right.
been your experience also?
That's right. That's right. And even in the Hawaiian tradition that I come from, the Hawaiians believe that all illness is a form of tension, whether that tension be physical, emotional, or spiritual. And so when in the facilitation of the deep relaxation and of the altered state, because when you're administering Reiki on someone, you're actually inviting someone into an altered state of consciousness. What does that mean? That just means that we all have access to those hidden realms. Anytime you pray, anytime you meditate, you're shifting the brainwave frequency just enough in order to enter into these other realms. And so when someone is receiving Reiki, they're actually entering into those hidden realms. And what's contained there? Healing, spiritual forces. And those forces work on the areas of the body that need to be worked on. And you're right, the energy will go where it's supposed to go. And that's the reason why people will have a release. And like you said, a burp or a fart, or they'll have a cry. And the idea is that they're releasing that tension.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So on your website, you talk about you work in the spiritual and intuitive counseling,
Yep.
shamanic healing, Reiki, chakra balancing, and breath work. How do you pack that all together, and how does that intersect with your path that you went on with Huna wisdom and the shaman's way, if you will?
Yeah, so there are so many ways in. There are so many ways in, and yeah, I do work with a lot of different modalities. The one thing that I found was that there was a universal way to think about all of this material, a way to think about working with energy, a way to think about working with healing, and that came from Hawaii. So after I had studied the chakras and had studied breathwork and had studied Reiki, then and studied shamanism and shamanic healing. Then I found this wisdom that comes out of Polynesia that actually, in a very simple way, helps you enter into. There are 7 principles that we follow in Huna, and if you follow those 7 principles and you integrate them into your ways of working, you enter into how shamans think, how healers think, and it's a different way of thinking than how we normally think. And so what I found with that philosophy that comes out of Polynesia was a way to integrate my own mind with the magical thinking of the shamans. It was all things that I was already doing, but I just found a system that helped me understand why this all works.
I got it. Perfect explanation. Thank you. So the 7 principles that you mentioned of Huna, let's go through them. The world is what you think it is.
Yeah.
So let's go through these 7.
Sure. Yeah, so there are 7 principles that we follow, and you've heard all these before, but to have them all in one place it is really helpful. So the first principle says the world is what you think it is. So that means that how we think, what we think and believe, not only affect our experience of the world, but that the world itself, that reality itself, will shift and change based on our very thoughts. So that means that what's going on between our ears has a co-creative influence on the world. So that means you think your life into being. So and that's why it's important to really look at your thoughts. The second principle says...
hang on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me interrupt, because I want, for our listeners, I want to just give an example of each one of these things, because to me, we have heard all of these things, but when you integrate them together, you get a very beautiful blend and a stew that really, I think, helps you. So for the first point, the world is what you think it is. Let's just discuss this very briefly, and that is, we create, the past is gone, the future hasn't arrived yet, and so many people are pining for both. But we're right now, you and I are talking right now. That's it. That's all that really counts. And I don't think a lot of people, enough people, if you will, think that way. And when you begin to live in the present, you then can create your world. So if you're thinking of, oh my God, COVID, you're attracting it to you. So you have to be really careful about what you think about. Jonathan?
Yeah, in fact, there's common narratives around like the coronavirus, like what's going on right now and all the tumult and all of that. And there are common narratives that we see on television that say that this is a difficult time and a tumultuous time and all of that. And that's one narrative. And if that's the narrative that you choose to align with, then that will be your experience of what this is. But the fact of the matter is that this time has been prophesied on the planet, as a time of deep change, systemic change, and that even though this is a tumultuous and even scary time, it's also a hugely beneficial one, where so many unconscious forces are being excavated for us to look at in a different way. And we are moving toward a new consciousness. And I would even go so far as to say, as anyone listening to this program, on some level, know that they're a part of that shift in consciousness. And so if the world is what you think it is, if you want to think of what's going on in the world right now that way, then that becomes your reality. That becomes the narrative of this, rather than the scary one with the virus that's coming to get me.
Got it. Okay, Jonathan Hammond, The Shaman's Mind, is his book, Huna, Wisdom to Change Your Life. Point 2, called Kala, There Are No Limits.
There are no limits. So that means that this is a limitless universe. And so what that means is that there is no separation. So we are all part of one great happening. And we are an individual aperture through which that one great happening sees itself. Another way to think of it is that we are all individual waves on the ocean, but we can't separate ourselves from the ocean. So that means that whatever work we do on ourselves, whatever healing we do on ourselves, whatever self-development we do on ourselves, has an impact, a direct impact on the collective. And in that way, if we heal ourselves, we heal the world.
So would that also imply that God or spirit experiences itself through us?
That's right. That's right. We are all. If we had just been left alone, we are just divine beings. We are a spark of the divine, and it's all divine. And so we each play an individual. We are each an individual spark in that one unity. And so, and if we're going to treat ourselves as a spark of the divine, that means that loving ourselves becomes a whole different intentionality. Because if we just in the same way that we would revere the divine, if we revere ourselves, we're actually just simply doing the most natural thing imaginable.
Right. You know, it's interesting. The greatest thing I've ever learned, or one of the greatest things I've ever learned, is that that's been life-changing for me, is that once you recognize the divinity in everything, every individual, as well as, even if they're being crazy or whatever, it's not their fault, and the trees, the pavement, everything, that God is everything. Once you start to look at things that way, your life changes. Has that occurred for you, Jonathan, as in your path of shamanism?
Of course, you know, we are all walking around with a case of mistaken identity. We have all forgotten or been treated in such a way that we believe ourselves to be something other than what we actually are. There's a famous Buddhist monk who once said, "If we could all see ourselves as we actually are, we would fall down and worship each other." Mm-hmm. And that's really a truth. And so it's not about that we're not God beings having a human experience. It's what is in us that obscures that, you know, that doesn't allow us to see that about ourselves.
Now, let's pause on that before we get into the third one, energy flows where attention goes, because I think what's happening is, you know, you go on Facebook, and now Facebook is just one big argument. All people do on Facebook is argue. It's no fun anymore. I mean, if you want to look at pictures and have some more fun, you know, go to Instagram or whatever. That's just my own personal opinion until that gets destroyed. But Facebook is just a place to argue. But it seems like in our culture, and we've seen this through the COVID thing, it's become politicized. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. What is going on in the world? Because it's supposed to be a time of great awakening. And in time of great awakening, that there's an ascension process going on, that the vibration is raising itself. Is what is happening, Jonathan, from your purview, that some people can't handle this raising of the vibration and frequency, and it's making them crazy. And then a lot of people are going to check out because of that, and the world is going to change, and it's going to change for the better, but we've got to get through these tumultuous times.
Well, I think there's a piece here that's really important. Inherent in healing, literally on the opposite side of the coin of healing, is resistance. Whenever there's growth or change, and there is always resistance. And so a lot of what's going on right now is that there is this absolutely this planetary shift that's happening. And with that planetary shift, and we are going in a certain direction. And with that planetary shift, everyone is being asked to look at how they would have to change in order to align with where we're going. And in terms of the COVID-19, that is an intelligent force that comes from the earth to say to us, it's time to look at this stuff. This is not good enough. The earth says to us, I've provided you with everything you need to sustain yourself to the end of time, and you're just not doing it. And so you all need to go to your room, and you need to go think about what you've done on some level, and and everyone needs to go inward to figure out what do I individually need to do in order to move with this major earth shift. And with that, of course, is resistance. I actually think that what's going on right now is the time of the healer, and will continue to be so, because as everyone is adjusting to the new normal, with adjustment always requires that we have a companion to help us through that adjustment, because we will resist. And it's the human nature. There's a default network in the brain that constantly causes us to replay the past and worry about the future, because it wants to create a continuity of self that it understands itself to be. And so it'll agitate us when we start to mess with that sense of self. But that sense of self for all of us is shifting and changing, and that's what that agitation is, and that's why there is all the fighting, and that's why it's even I don't want to wear my mask, I don't want to change, I don't want to adapt. That's all going on. And then on the other side, why won't you adapt? Why won't you change? Don't you see it's better over here? And all of that. And I would say that the place to be is really in the middle place, where you can see all of it. And allow yourself to kind of hold consciousness around all of it, rather than take a side so much, because that's just going to lead to more resistance. And I think it's more about, like, we're all in this together.
What a beautiful response, Jonathan. Thank you. Our special guest, Guys Radio, Jonathan Hammond. The Shaman's Mind is his book, Huna Wisdom to Change Your Life. We're talking about the 7 principles of Huna. We're up to number 3, Makia.
Yeah, energy flows where attention goes. It's really an amazing idea. So where we place our focus and attention, what we give our focus and attention to, elicits the energy that will bring about the creation, the nearest physical equivalent of whatever we put our focus and attention on. So that means that whatever we're putting our focus and attention on elicit energy that bring about what it is that we're focusing on. So again, it speaks to the power of the mind, and it speaks to that the power of the mind actually elicits the creative energy of the universe to manifest on our behalf. So it's really important, with the Huna philosophy, it's really important that you pay attention to what you're paying attention to, because whatever you're paying attention to is in the process of becoming matter.
Okay, the next one, Manawa.
So, yeah, you sort of got at it. Now is the moment of power. So you've heard of mindfulness and being in the present moment and all of that. And a mystic may want to abide in the now, but the shamans, they want to do something with the now. They want to take action in the now. And so because now is the only place we can do anything, now is the moment of power. That's what this principle says, that you can only access power in the now, because now is the only place where you can actually do something. So you can't get burnt by yesterday's sun, you can't get wet by tomorrow's rain. The only place where you can do anything is right now.
Got it. Okay, so it sounds like, we ultimately, the responsibility is with us, but that's a really good thing, because the power of an individual to heal themselves actually sends a healing out to others, because we're all connected. So it's a really good thing. So in your life, Jonathan, I'm sorry.
And also just to say that, it also means that, we drag around the past, we drag around old stories, we drag around what happened to us, and we bring that into the now. And what that principle is saying is that at any moment we can start over. And who you think yourself to be is who you think yourself to be right now. And if there's something about the past that you've done that you don't like, or that did to you, you can, in the moment now, change how you want to think about that. And you can only do that right now. So it puts that Huna is so much about the personal responsibility that we each individually carry, and the magical tool that is choice.
Okay.
That we are always that's always available to us. Yes.
So, as on a in practical terms for our listeners again, it seems to me that so many people have trouble with exactly what you're talking about, and there's two parts of it. One is the ability to release. We all carry around our emotional baggage, and it's really hard to release things. And then the other very difficult area that people don't talk about as much is that it's really a challenge to learn how to receive. That it's limitless what you can receive because people put their ceilings up above themselves and they don't feel worthy or they don't feel they can receive miracles. So, in your experience, Jonathan, talk to us about that to help our listeners.
So there's only a vast field of reality onto which we can project anything. And what we project with our thoughts and beliefs then petition off reality and that becomes our world. So I'll just give you an example. So if I use this example a lot. If you're a 35-year-old woman and you think, it's too late for me. All women over 35 end up alone. And that is a belief that you give your focus and attention to, and you give legitimacy and clout. The spiritual intelligence of the universe have to work with that belief. And you have taken a belief and you've cordoned off reality in order to fit into that belief. And as much as the spiritual intelligences would love to sit the guy next to you on the subway, they know that they can't reach you because you have a belief that creates your reality that doesn't allow that to come in. So that's a way to think of it. So in terms of limitlessness, it is a limitless universe, but we can only receive what we are willing to receive. And the only way to adjust what we are willing to receive is to have beliefs around what it is that we want and what it is that we are willing to receive. So from my perspective, it is perfectly appropriate to really want what you want, to yearn for what you yearn for. What you want and what you yearn for is, in fact, a deep part of who you are. And to let that be is to invite in receiving it. But to pathologize what it is that we want is to cordon off ourselves from receiving it.
Okay. The name of the show is Guys Radio, and Guy doesn't mean any particular type of guy except for it's a humanity thing. It's about a woman can be a guy's guy. It's not straight, gay, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's about recognizing the divinity in other people, treating people respectfully, and just being a good person. Why is it? And this has been my observation. I could be wrong, but you're serving people and you're working with people and healing people all the time. Women seem a lot more open to these things. And even, I wrote a book. It's about two guys in advertising competing for love, sex, and power and money. And it's like the male Sex and the City, and women read it. What is it about men where they get stuck? And I see it with my friends. I'm a boomer. They're doing the exact same thing. A lot of them, not all of them. They're getting curious now. They're awakening now to a certain extent, which is good. But men seem to get stuck. Has that been your experience, and what can we do to help them? And I'm a guy, so I get stuck too. My wife points it out to me all the time. Like, you got to let this go. You got to let things in. You got to get rid of things that are like bogging you down. I just went through a situation that we talked about prior to the show, Jonathan, where I was so emotionally attached to my life in New York City that it was getting to me. It was creating problems in the closing of my place and things like that. I finally prayed to ask for Archangel Michael, come and take your sword and cut off that emotional tie I have to this place and let me be free to go on. What is it about men where we get stuck?
Yeah, well, I work with a lot of men. I work with a lot of heterosexual men, and the men's movement, masculine spirituality, that started around 1999. That's not even 20 years old. And what that means is that men have not had a model to emulate in the culture that's something other than Marlboro Man,
MMA or manscaping, right?
Right. And really, men have not been shown that they actually are full. They get to have full expression of their feelings. That they're allowed to want. That they're allowed to be vulnerable. That they're allowed to be scared. That the integrated man serves the community, rather than takes from the community. And these are all things that we're not taught to men. And so it's just, and so men are just really in the beginning of this unfoldment. What does it really mean? That we are all on a spectrum. All men do have feminine qualities. And what do I mean by feminine? Nothing having to do with mannerisms. The feminine is intuitive. The feminine, it feels into interconnection. The feminine is connected to the emotional realms. And one of the things that's going on the planet is that as has been prophesied, that this is a time when the masculine and the feminine will come together in a different way. The Quechua people talk about the previous 2,000 years being a very masculine-dominated time, and it's great because we develop science and technology and all those things. But we're out of balance, and what we're needing now is the feminine. We're needing the earth wisdom, and every man, so many men are feeling the need to bring that into their context of what a man is, and that's actually, if you talk about masculine power. That's to feel your feelings. That's actually a powerful place to be in. To be vulnerable, that is a place that all men should aspire to be.
So how does modern man, though? How do you balance that, Jonathan? Because a lot of what I've read and talked to a lot of people and interviewed people is women want men to be men in the best sense of the word, and that doesn't mean macho, but they don't want blubbering, they don't want you blubbering and being too sensitive. They want to feel like, okay, he's a guy. So there's a good thing about like that beast of knuckle dragging, beast of burden. Sometimes he can carry the bags from the car and stuff like that. Whatever it is, how can you be a guy and kind of open yourself up to all aspects of yourself and your quote unquote feminine side without falling over the edge and being seen as like, oh, look at the wuss he is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's an issue. Am I wrong?
Yeah. I see what you're saying. I would go so far to say that what women aren't responding to wusses and blubbering. They're responding to I'm not getting my needs met. You're not feeling into me. And and you're not expanding. The woman is the feminine. What could be masculine? It could be men and men, women and women. It doesn't matter. But the feminine polarity is one that is to receive and is to expand, and the masculine polarity is to facilitate that expansion. And so if being more emotional helps you facilitate that expansion because you can feel into the needs of the feminine more, then that's not blubbering. That's not wuss. That's actually entering into your manhood in order to, or your masculine, I should say, in order to expand the feminine. So I don't think I think what women are getting at is I'm waiting for my needs to get met, and I think rather than something weak.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for articulating that for me, because what we're trying to do is really help the dudes out there because they're getting it from all angles, and we want to help them. And it has been, the past 2,000 years has been in some ways male dominated, but if you really look back, before that, women were running the show. So now it's coming back again. So things have a way of evening themselves out.
And just to say too, I think a part of the contemporary modern man is actually about, despite the fact that there's a lot of posturing and a lot of bravura, I don't think men actually feel good about themselves. I don't think that men allow themselves to actually feel good about themselves. There's always this sense of I need to be more, I need to be doing more, I need to be more impressive, I need to be, and I think the acceptance of actually who we are, and in indigenous cultures there were aspects of one's development that were celebrated. There were initiations into adulthood, initiations into adolescence. And we've lost so many of those in this culture. And it's in the initiation where you're saying to the man, this is who you are. You get to be this. You get to own this about yourself. You get to feel good about yourself. Okay. And I think that what sociologically, what we're so what so many men are so mired in is just that I'm not enough. Mm-hmm. I'm not enough. That there's a level of masculine power of which I am constantly falling short.
You think some of that is driven by you've got the media, you've got MMA, you've got the president comes across very I'm strong, and
Yeah.
and a lot of that it's propagating this the division, if you will, and this definition, this very limited definition of masculinity, and it's kind of getting in the way. It sounds like.
Well, I think that the biggest thing that gets in our way in terms of living a purpose-driven life, living a life that is coming from our own truth, a life that we create for ourselves, is that we care too much about what everyone thinks. Everyone is trying to assimilate. You turn on the television, it tells you how you're supposed to look. You turn on the television, it tells you what men are, what women are, what your money's supposed to look like, what black people are, what they are, and we're all haunted by this idea of fitting in. And to live a purpose-driven life, and certainly a spiritual life, and a spiritual life is about following invisible forces, following your gut. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses. And so part of everyone's growth and development is, how do I not try to assimilate, but to actually come for myself? A lot of times in my private practice, I'll say to a client, and they'll be bathed with relief when I say it. I'll say, you know what, you're a little weird. And when I say it to them, I can just see the relief, as if to say, like, thank God I don't have to fit in with everyone else, because I don't feel like I do. And that is so much. That's so much part of the culture. So much part of Instagram and Facebook. Even if you're on the right side of Black Lives Matter, are you doing it right? Are you assimilating with? Are you protesting in the right way? Are you saying the right thing? Or certainly the opposite side. And I think all of that. I think that truth is individual. It's one of the principles of Huna that what works is true. What works for you is true. The truth is relative. There's no absolute truth, and it comes from you. And you can only find that by saying, thank you all for your opinion, but I'm going to come from me.
I love it. Jonathan Hammond, our special guest on Guys Radio, the Shaman's Mind-Huna wisdom to change your life. So, Jonathan, how has this experience in shamanism and Huna wisdom changed your life?
I think that we all, not all, I think maybe all, but I think for some people it's so obscured that they can't feel it. We're all supposed to serve the collective in some way. We're all supposed to we all have a part to play that is bigger than us, because it's all interconnected. And more than anything else, not just for me, but for everyone, to find out what that is, to find out how your life serves. The indigenous people talk about that the actions that they take reverberate 7 generations. And so that means that everything that we do really matters, that we are leaving, even if it's just being a good father, a good partner, in some way, that we all have a part to play. And so more than anything else, I feel like my journey is about really finding what that is for me, and I find so much that what I heal in myself affects the others. When I bring others to their own healing, it affects people that I don't even know, and it reverberates out from that. And if we could all just do our part individually, however we serve the collective, this ascension of consciousness that we're moving in would happen a lot more easily.
Your specific gifts, as you continue to do your work in spiritual intuitive counseling, shamanic healing, Reiki, chakra balancing, breath work. When you walk down the street and come across somebody, their energy precedes them, of course. What do you pick up on people? Do you go to the supermarket and oh, well, that dude's got cancer? Or what do you see in people? How do you read people? Is it something that is it mathematical for you? Is it intuitive? How do you come across? I mean, even our conversation, we clicked before we got on the air, and it was like, oh, I know this guy already, and it was great, and it's been great. But how do you work? How do you live? How does all of this integrate in your day-to-day life?
Sure. Well, I don't read anyone without their permission. So if I'm in the supermarket and someone hasn't asked, I'm not really picking up on that. That's not my job. But that said, from a shamanic perspective, what are we doing? We're looking at the hidden reality. We're looking at the thing that's underneath what's being presented. So if you think of consensus reality, that's one piece of an apple pie, and shamanic reality is the entire rest of the pie. It's all that which doesn't meet the eye, and there is so much that doesn't meet the eye. So what I'm tuning into are the things underneath. So if someone comes to me with a problem, their life's falling apart, they lost their job, they're questioning long-held values, I know that underneath those difficulties are the hidden gifts of the soul, yet unseen. And so my job is to actually see, is to begin to see how are these difficulties happening for them. In the same way, when someone comes to me and they're just not in their inspired self, my job is to use my imagination to see them well. So to see them at the height of their wellness. So what I'm doing is, what I'm looking at is something that is not presented, that I don't see in physical reality, and then I'm looking at either the cause underneath it or where that person is supposed to go. And so that's sort of what I'm tuning into. I'm either tuning into and it's all gifts. It's either the gifts of the problems or it's the gifts that are waiting for them once they allow themselves to want that much.
Okay, so for our listeners out there, what are some of the steps, the initial steps they can do to kind of raise their vibration, get with the collective consciousness to change it, be the best, heal themselves? What are some of the things? I mean, is diet part of it? Do they need to meditate? Do they need to take on a holistic practice? Or what are some of this? People are busy. There's a lot of stress right now. Sure. I always say that chaos creates opportunity, but for a lot of people, they're just under the gun and they've got to put food on the table and that's it. What can people like that, and plenty of them are our listeners, what can they do to get started on this path to ascension, if you will?
Sure. Well, certainly anything that's practical, like meditation practice or eating well, all that's really helpful. But I would say, first of all, the most important thing is to know that if whatever you work on in yourself really does affect the collective. And so the easiest way to look at what is it that I need to do, what do I need to look at, is to look at your life. Because if there are things in your life that you don't like, that means that there are thoughts and beliefs that created those things. And to begin to address those, what are the habitual negative core beliefs that you tell yourself all the time? I'm not good enough. I don't have enough money. I don't look right. My nose doesn't look right. I hate my body. All men are, all people are, all women are, like whatever those negative core beliefs are, they are on autopilot. And unless addressed, they will continue to be on autopilot. And again, if we're not paying attention to what we're paying attention to, those things then manifest into reality, and they manifest in the things in our life that we don't like. So the main thing that I would say for people to do is to actually sit down and write down what's the crap that I tell myself all the time. What are the self-limiting beliefs? What are the, and just let the negativity flow. Get it out so you know what it is, and that's what you're up against. And then once you have your list, I hate my body, and I'm not good enough, and I'll never make enough money, and whatever those are, and then and they'll come trippingly off the tongue because you tell yourself them all the time, and then rewrite them in their opposite and positive aspect, even if you can't believe it. And now you have a new list of beliefs, and then you work on it and you shift it, and moment by moment you go, there's the negative belief that's on autopilot. I'm not doing that one anymore. I'm doing this one now. And it literally becomes a process where if you're diligent, you can change the beliefs. And in changing the beliefs, changing your habituated thinking, you are changing your reality. And so that's what I would say to do.
And it's interesting, when somebody does this, my experience has been when you write the positives, the things that you've written about in the negative, and you flip them around, it's actually difficult at first to write them in the positive because you don't believe them. And your hand, it's getting all scribbly while you're writing that because you really don't believe some of those things.
And let me give you ancient shamanic secret. Fake it till you make it. That's absolutely what you do, because you're not going to believe it at first. And why? It's not because we're dealing with a character flaw, or you're not smart enough or anything like that. That we learned these things about us as children. We learned these negative things about ourselves, about life, as we were developing. And they have more clout than our new shiny beliefs. They've been around longer. They have legitimacy. We've given them so much attention. And so that's why you do have to fake it till you make it, because you're actually saying, I see you there. I see that I've tended to this negative belief in this way. And I've given it so much clout and legitimacy and space, and I see you there, and I see that that's your opinion, but we're not doing it this way. We're doing it this way now. And you do that over and over and over again. So there's a process in my book, the one you couldn't pronounce, Ho'oponopono, which is the practice around looking at those habituated patterns and giving them a new alternative, reconfiguring them, reframing them in such a way so that they don't have the same clout and legitimacy, because they're all just mistakes that we learned. And we can and just like you can teach a child to do something differently or be different in the same way, we can teach ourselves at any stage of our development or age. We can teach ourselves to shift those things as well.
Got it. Jonathan Hammond, you are a guy's guy. I got to tell you, you're doing terrific work. You've helped me just in this conversation. Hopefully, we've enlightened some of our listeners. They're enlightened already, but I don't mean it in a judgmental way. But hopefully, we've imparted some wisdom, some new thinking, looking beyond that fence in the backyard, if you will. The Shaman's Mind-Huna Wisdom to Change Your Life is the name of the book, but I think a lot of people would want to work with you. Could you please tell our listeners where they can find out more of you? Obviously now the one-on-ones are being done virtual, but that's a good thing because you can reach more people.
Yep. The easiest way to reach me is jonathanhammond.com.
Perfect. Well, listen,
thank
you so much. Thank you for being on Guys Radio. I hope you'll come back. We'll chop it up again. Terrific job. I love the work you're doing for mankind and for men, and for helping define and redefine and helping guys kind of know who they are and what they can be. It's important work, and I thank you for being on Guys Radio. You keep doing that great work you're doing, Jonathan.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Robert Manni's The Guy's Guide to Love is a fast-paced tale of flawed men and savvy women competing for love, sex, power, and money in the city where they play for keeps. It's the men's successor to Sex and the City. The Guy's Guide to Love is a sexy romp through the fast-moving, high-stakes world of Madison Avenue. Available now on Amazon and wherever books are sold. It's Guys Radio.
Okay, terrific conversation with Jonathan Hammond. We discussed his book, The Shaman's Mind-Huna Wisdom to Change Your Life, and also we learned about the Ho'oponopono. I think I got that right this time. And how, what did we learn? Really, it's like how spirituality travels. The major tenets of spirituality and even religions around the world are basically the same. It's about recognizing divinity in everything, including and most importantly in yourself and in others, and leading the best life you can and being of service. And I think Jonathan's done a wonderful job and very interesting stuff there, and maybe we'll have him back. So anyhow, Guys Radio, we're here every Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Pacific Time on KCAA in Southern California, 102.3, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. There's a rebroadcast of the show every Sunday at 6 p.m. We're also the podcast. You can catch it anywhere. iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spreaker, Stitcher, Deezer, Castbox, Podchaser, TuneIn Radio, KCAA.com. You can stream the show there. Blog Talk Radio, my website, robertmanni.com, and also my new YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and you just put in my name, Robert Manni, you'll go to Guys TV, where we have kind of greatest hits of Guys Radio. We've got close to 50 shows up there now, and there's going to be more. And probably every show moving forward will end up on Guys TV. So I hope you can join us there. My website, robertmanni.com, MANNI.com. And there you can check out, there's a lot of videos, there's a lot of information there through my blogs. There's over 300 blog posts about everything about life, love, and the pursuit of happiness. A lot of stuff about relationships that you might find relevant. And also you can download 3 free chapters of my novel, which is the source material for everything Guys Guy. It's called The Guy's Guide to Love. and it's about two guys in advertising in New York City competing for love, sex, power, and money. We've got strong women, we've got flawed men, and it's a rom-com, it's a romp. It's been called the male successor to Sex and the City. So I hope you can give that a shot, and also subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes if you support us. That would be really fantastic. So thank you. And also, I'm all over social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now YouTube. So Guys Radio, we're here for you every week. I've got plenty of shows coming up, and we've got a lot of fantastic guests, and I'm very, very appreciative of all my listeners and all my guests, and I can't wait to do it again next week. And until then, like I always like to say, guys, finish first.